The scent of polished mahogany and expensive leather, a powerful aroma of old money and corporate ambition, perpetually filled the office of Eleanor Vance, the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar tech company, Viridian Dynamics. She was a brilliant black woman, a corporate titan who had ascended to the pinnacle of her industry. Yet despite her immense success, she felt a profound sense of isolation and a growing disconnect from her own company's core values. She inherited the company from her father, a visionary who had built it on the principles of ethical innovation community and the belief that a company's greatest asset was its people, not its profit margins. Eleanor, however, feared she was failing his legacy. She often spent her evenings alone in her luxurious, minimalist penthouse surrounded by technology, but starved for genuine human connection, haunted by the feeling that her father's noble vision was slowly being replaced by a faceless corporate machine driven by greed and indifference. Her penthouse, a masterpiece of modern architecture with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a sprawling, glittering cityscape, was a gilded cage. It was filled with sleek, custom-built furniture, avant-garde art, and the latest in smart home technology, but it felt cold, sterile, and empty. She would walk from room to room, the echo of her own footsteps, the only sound the silence, a deafening reminder of her solitude. The only things that felt truly alive in the space were the old analog photographs of her father and her taken in the early days of Viridian Dynamics. In one picture, her father, a warm, kind man with a visionary's glint in his eye, stood beside her, a young, bright-eyed girl on the original factory floor, surrounded by his first few employees. The genuine smiles, the sense of camaraderie, the tangible, vibrant energy of a dream, in its infancy, it was all there, frozen in time. She would trace the faces with her fingers, a deep ache in her chest, a longing for a time when the company felt more like a family and less like a sprawling, soulless empire. Eleanor's father had a mantra. The soul of a company is not in the boardroom, but on the factory floor. This saying, now just a framed quote in her immaculately organized office, gnawed at her, a persistent, unwelcome echo of her own perceived failure. A recent highly publicized scandal involving a mid-level manager's discriminatory hiring practices and a subsequent cover-up had deeply unsettled her. The manager, a man named Marcus Thorne, a charismatic but cunning head of human resources, had presented her with a clean, sanitized report, a masterpiece of corporate spin that made the issue seem like a minor, isolated incident. But Eleanor, with her razor-sharp intuition, knew better. She felt the need to get to the root of the problem, to understand the true pulse of her company, not the sanitized version presented in her quarterly reports. Her father's legacy was at stake, and she would not let it be tarnished by men like Marcus. One late Saturday afternoon, seeking refuge from the sterile confines of her penthouse and the relentless pressures of her work, she found herself walking through a high-end department store. It was a place she rarely visited, a world of conspicuous consumption that felt alien to her. As she navigated through the crowded aisles, her sharp eyes caught a scene unfolding near the registers. A young black cashier, no older than 20, was being unfairly reprimanded by a white manager for a minor mistake, a simple inventory discrepancy. The manager, a man with a bloated sense of self-importance, his face flushed with a petty bureaucratic authority, spoke in a loud, condescending tone. His voice dripped with an accusatory, patronizing malice, a thinly veiled prejudice that was all too familiar to Eleanor. The young cashier, her eyes downcast, her shoulders slumped, endured the public humiliation with a quiet, heartbreaking dignity that struck Eleanor to her core. Eleanor felt a primal surge of anger. This was not a business problem. It was a human problem. This was the exact kind of institutional arrogance and casual cruelty she feared was festering within her own company. She knew she could not stand by and do nothing. But she also knew that a grand theatrical gesture would only further embarrass the young woman. She had to act with quiet, decisive purpose. Using her influence but not her name, she subtly intervened. She approached the manager not as the CEO of Viridian Dynamics, but as a concerned, intelligent customer. She asked to speak with him privately, her voice calm and firm, an undeniable authority in her tone that made him instinctively straighten his tie. She led him to a quiet corner away from the registers and calmly pointed out the flaws in his logic and his unfair treatment of the employee. She spoke of inventory management, best practices of employee motivation, and of the importance of de-escalating conflicts with dignity and respect. She spoke with such an intimate, powerful knowledge of corporate protocol and human resources that the manager, momentarily flustered and intimidated, was forced to listen. He backed down, a look of stunned disbelief on his face. Eleanor then, with a quiet nod to the young cashier, walked out of the store. She had ensured the young cashier's dignity was restored, not with a grand gesture, but with a quiet, decisive act of justice that showed her core character. She didn't seek thanks or recognition. She simply did what was right. But the interaction left a deep impression on her. She recognized a familiar institutional arrogance in the manager, a mirror of what she feared was happening at Viridian. The incident, small as it was, became a catalyst, a vivid personal reminder of why her father's legacy was so important and why she had to act decisively to protect it. It was no longer a theoretical problem on a spreadsheet. It was a human problem, a quiet injustice that she had witnessed with her own two eyes. She knew then, with a profound certainty that settled deep in her bones, that she could no longer lead from a gilded cage. To save her company, to honor her father's legacy, she would have to go to the factory floor herself. She would have to become invisible to truly see the truth. The pristine, sterile calm of Eleanor's penthouse was shattered by a single devastating email. The chime of her phone, usually a welcome notification from a board member or a senior executive, now sounded like a death knell. The sender was anonymous, their address a complex string of numbers and letters, but the message was anything but cryptic. The subject line read, "Viridian's rot," and the body of the email contained damning evidence, a meticulously documented systemic pattern of racial bias in hiring, promotions, and pay, particularly within her own management teams. The whistleblower, a trusted senior developer who had worked for her father for years, detailed how the Human Resources Department, a bastion of corporate professionalism on the surface, had been manipulating performance reviews, actively blocking diverse talent from advancing and creating a toxic, exclusionary work environment. This wasn't just a corporate problem. It was a fire that burned at the very heart of her identity. It was a direct personal betrayal of her father's legacy, a legacy she had vowed to protect. The email was not a spreadsheet of cold statistics. It was a narrative of broken promises, shattered dreams, and quiet despair. It spoke of a culture where talent was overlooked, where hard work was dismissed, and where integrity was a liability. The fire of her anger, so recently kindled in the department store, now raged into a full-blown inferno. This was an institutional failure, a poison seeping into the veins of her company, and she knew she would not ignore it. The name at the center of the email, the man who had authored this slow-motion train wreck, was a familiar and chilling one: Marcus Thorne, the charismatic but corrupt head of human resources. The email highlighted a particularly egregious case that felt far too personal for Eleanor to dismiss. It was the story of a promising young black engineer, a rising star in the R&D department, who was publicly humiliated and passed over for a promotion in favor of a less qualified white candidate. The email contained copies of the original stellar performance reviews, juxtaposed with the falsified negative ones that were submitted to the promotion committee. The young engineer, a graduate of a prestigious university with a portfolio of groundbreaking projects, had been the unanimous choice for the promotion among his peers. He was a visionary, a man with a natural gift for problem-solving and a deep, infectious passion for his work. Yet under the false pretense of a lack of leadership experience, he was denied the position. The email detailed how Marcus Thorne had orchestrated the entire charade, coaching the less qualified candidate, an old friend of his from his college fraternity, on how to manipulate the interview process, and then falsifying the final review to ensure his victory. The young engineer, disheartened and disillusioned by the blatant injustice, had left the company, taking his brilliance and his potential with him. The narrative of this injustice was a direct assault on everything Eleanor believed in. It wasn't a statistic. It was a person, a life, a future that had been unjustly derailed by a man who saw people as pawns in a cruel game. She realized the rot went deeper than a single mid-level manager. It was a systemic failure, an institutional rot that was corroding the very foundations of the company her father had built. Marcus Thorne, the smooth-talking head of HR, was the mastermind behind the cover-up and the architect of this discriminatory culture. He was a charismatic manipulator, a master of corporate jargon and false sincerity, a man who saw people not as assets, but as pawns in his game of power and wealth. His ambition was boundless, his ruthlessness absolute. He had a talent for presenting a pristine professional facade to the board, while quietly, insidiously dismantling the very principles the company was built on. He was a smiling predator, a corporate wolf in a beautifully tailored sheep suit, and he was the central figure in Eleanor's new, unwelcome reality. She realized that confronting him in the boardroom armed with an anonymous email would be a foolish theatrical move that he would easily deflect. He would spin the story, cast doubt on the whistleblower's credibility, and paint himself as a victim of a baseless smear campaign. She knew his game, and she knew she couldn't win it with a simple email. Eleanor, after reading the anonymous email and rereading it a dozen times, made a decision. It was a decision born not of logic, but of a fierce protective instinct. She could not fire a man like Marcus Thorne without irrefutable first-hand evidence that would stand up in court and public opinion. She realized that her position as CEO, far from being a position of power, put her too far removed from the truth. She was in a gilded cage surrounded by yes-men and sycophants who would never dare to tell her the unvarnished truth. To find the truth, she would have to get her hands dirty. She would have to become an invisible observer. She decided to go undercover to become a janitor in her own company, a role so overlooked, so invisible, that she would be privy to conversations and behaviors no one would ever display in front of the CEO. This was a profound, life-altering decision. She would shed her identity, her wealth, and her power to find the truth, a truth that she feared would shatter her entire world. The thought of cleaning toilets, of mopping floors, of being treated as a non-entity was both terrifying and exhilarating. She would have to learn to be invisible, to listen without being heard, to observe without being seen. This would be a physical and emotional trial unlike anything she had ever faced. The only person who knew her secret was her trusted executive assistant, Liam. Liam was a young, brilliant man, fiercely loyal and deeply concerned for Eleanor's well-being. He had worked for her father and had a profound respect for the company's founding principles. With a deep sense of loyalty and a visible nervous fear for her safety, he helped her prepare for the physical and emotional challenges of her new role. He arranged for her to receive a new inconspicuous ID card, a new uniform, and a new identity. Alara, a quiet, unassuming janitor. He coached her on the basics of cleaning, on the rhythm of the night shift, and on the unspoken rules of the company's underbelly. He was her only lifeline, her only connection to her old life, and he would be her eyes and ears in the boardroom while she was on the factory floor. Eleanor knew that this decision was a point of no return. After this, there was no going back to the pristine, sterile world of the C-suite. The journey she was about to embark on would fundamentally change her, her company, and the legacy of her father forever. She took one last look at the glittering cityscape from her penthouse window, a world she was about to leave behind, and walked towards her new, invisible life. Eleanor, now going by the name Alara, started her first night as a janitor, her new identity feeling like a costume she hadn't yet learned to wear. She was an expert at navigating boardrooms, but the rhythm of the night shift was a foreign language. Her uniform, a simple, baggy polyester jumpsuit, felt like a heavy shroud, an invisibility cloak that erased her power, her wealth, her very identity. She had spent the last 2 days with Liam, her trusted executive assistant, meticulously studying cleaning manuals and watching a dizzying array of YouTube tutorials on everything from how to properly wax a floor to the most efficient way to scrub a toilet. Her movements were practiced, but her muscles ached with an unfamiliar exhaustion. Her new invisible role, however, gave her an entirely new perspective. As she moved through the darkened corridors and empty offices, a ghost in her own machine, she heard casual, discriminatory conversations that would never have been uttered in her presence as CEO. She heard a junior manager complain loudly about diversity hires who don't know their place. She saw blatant waste and negligence lights left on expensive equipment, left running a careless disregard for the company's resources that infuriated her. But most profoundly, she witnessed the quiet dignity of her fellow janitorial staff who moved with a silent, practiced efficiency, a team of unseen heroes who kept the company running while the titans of industry slept. She saw how they were treated as less than human, their presence acknowledged only when a mess needed to be cleaned. They were not seen as colleagues. They were seen as a service, a disposable commodity, a part of the building's infrastructure no more important than the plumbing. Her new boss, the night shift manager, was a man named Richard Sterling, Antagonist Type B, a man whose arrogance and condescension were breathtaking. He was a caricature of petty authority, a man who found his only source of power in bullying the vulnerable. He treated her with open contempt, sneering at her lack of speed and barking orders with a theatrical flourish. "You're not cleaning the windows, Alara," he'd say, his voice thick with sarcasm. "You're wiping away the hopes and dreams of a cleaner who actually wants a job here." His words were a constant low-level assault on her dignity, a relentless reminder of her new place in the corporate hierarchy. He saw a clumsy, inefficient older woman, a liability he couldn't wait to get rid of. The confrontation came on her third night in the belly of the beast, the main server room. It was a massive humming space, filled with the soft blue glow of 1,000 monitors and the rhythmic thrum of advanced machinery. While she was cleaning a console, Richard, in a moment of panic, stumbled and accidentally spilled a crucial chemical cleaning solution on a main server, causing a system-wide crash and a deafening, piercing alarm that echoed through the entire building. The monitors flashed with angry red warnings, and the rhythmic thrum of the machinery died, replaced by an ominous, unsettling silence. Panic-stricken, his face pale with a terror that a broken server could cost him his job, he barked orders at her, assuming she was incompetent. "Don't just stand there, you fool. Do something, find the manual. Call the IT department," he yelled, his voice cracking. But Eleanor, with her unparalleled knowledge of her own company's systems, a knowledge that had been painstakingly built over 2 decades, saw the problem instantly. She didn't boast or show off. She didn't have time. She acted out of pure, deep-seated instinct. She calmly, and with a stunning precision that only the CEO could possess, moved past Richard and over to a hidden panel she herself had designed years ago, a fail-safe no one else even knew existed. She bypassed the system's security protocols and executed a complex reboot sequence from the panel, her fingers flying across the keypad with the speed and confidence of a concert pianist. She saved the server, but only Richard witnessed her impossible feat. Richard was a man whose career had been built on taking credit for others' work. He was a bully, a man of petty cruelties, but not a true villain like Marcus Thorne. He was stunned by her impossible knowledge, her almost supernatural speed. He stared at her, his jaw slack, a look of utter bewildered disbelief on his face. But in his deep-seated arrogance, he dismissed it as a fluke, a lucky guess. He saw her as a janitor, a lowly cleaner, and a janitor in his world could not be a genius. The idea was a cognitive dissonance he simply couldn't process. He quickly regained his composure, his fear giving way to a cold professional anger. He couldn't let his mistake be known. So he did what all bullies do. He blamed the victim. He filed a complaint against Ilara for unauthorized access and insubordination, a petty move to cover his own error. But he had no idea of the depth of the person he's just tangled with. He had no idea that he had just fired the first shot in a war he was destined to lose, a war against the very woman who held his career, his future, and his very dignity in her hands. Meanwhile, a different game was being played on a higher, more sinister level. Marcus Thorne, the head of HR, was alerted to the minor server glitch, and he immediately seized on it as an opportunity. He privately praised Richard for handling the situation and subtly planted the idea that the janitor might be incompetent or even a saboteur. This manipulation was not just a passing comment. It was a carefully planned move designed to create a sense of fear and distrust among the lower-level staff, making them easier to control. He knew that if he could convince the janitorial staff to distrust one another, they would never be able to present a united front to share information or to expose his deep-seated corruption. He was creating a corporate panopticon, a world where everyone was a potential suspect and where he was the only one with all the answers. Marcus, a master manipulator, used the server glitch as a pretext to tighten security and install his own more intrusive surveillance software across the company. He pitched the idea to the board, a presentation filled with buzzwords like proactive security, data integrity, and risk mitigation. He framed it as a proactive measure to prevent future disruptions, a necessary step to protect the company from both external threats and internal sabotage. The board, a group of powerful but often disengaged individuals, approved the measure with a resounding vote of confidence, completely unaware of the insidious nature of the software. The new software, however, was designed to do more than just monitor. It was a Trojan horse, a sophisticated program designed to monitor and block any communications from the original whistleblower or anyone else attempting to expose his discriminatory practices. It was designed to create an information black hole, a world where the truth could never see the light of day. He had now effectively sealed the company off, ensuring that Eleanor, who was now a janitor with no access to her old networks, would never again receive another email like the first. He had created a fortress of lies, and he, Marcus Thorne, was its smiling, confident king. But as he walked through the halls of Viridian Dynamics, a triumphant smile on his face, he failed to notice the woman in the baggy polyester jumpsuit, her eyes a dark, intelligent fire watching his every move. He failed to realize that the janitor was a ghost in his machine, a quiet observer who had seen his game, a woman who would not rest until his kingdom of lies was brought to its knees. He had no idea that the glitch he so expertly exploited was about to become the very thing that would unravel his entire meticulously constructed world. The Viridian Dynamics server room, a massive humming space filled with the soft ethereal glow of 1,000 monitors and the rhythmic thrum of advanced machinery, became the symbolic arena for Eleanor's undercover mission. Marcus, having installed his new intrusive surveillance software, a digital Trojan horse designed to dismantle the company's ethical foundations from within, had planned a grand live test. This wasn't just a technical demonstration. It was a massive PR event designed to publicly demonstrate his leadership and secure billions in funding for his ethically compromised projects. He had been lobbying the board relentlessly, using his corporate charm and his masterful command of buzzwords to portray himself as the sole architect of this security marvel. The tension in the room was palpable, 100 engineers and managers gathering to witness the test, their faces a mixture of anticipation and nervous awe. The stakes were immense, and Eleanor, watching from her invisible perch, felt the weight of them in her bones. Not only was the company's integrity on the line, but also the safety of the anonymous whistleblower and the fate of every employee who had suffered under Marcus's discriminatory practices. This test, this performance, was his final move to consolidate power, to erase the past, and to ensure that his kingdom of prejudice would stand unchallenged. The air grew thick with a chilling anticipation, the silence punctuated only by the low hum of the servers and the soft, excited whispers of the gathered executives. As the test began, Eleanor, still in her janitor's uniform, was confined to a small cordoned-off section, a silent observer separated from the main technical team by a thick pane of soundproof glass. She was profoundly isolated in this moment, her identity and her immense power rendered invisible. The skeptical gazes of the engineers and the condescending sneers of the management, who didn't see her as anything more than a glorified cleaner, bore down on her, turning the gleaming server room into a suffocating pressure cooker. They saw a woman in a polyester jumpsuit, a forgotten ghost in a world of wealth and power, but they failed to see the brilliant mind, the fierce determination, and the deep abiding love for the company that lay beneath the surface. She felt a profound loneliness, a sense of helplessness that was a stark contrast to the power she wielded as CEO. She had to watch powerless as Marcus, with a smug confidence that bordered on arrogance, took center stage and initiated the test. Marcus, during his pre-test briefing, displayed a controlled arrogance, a performance of professional calm that hid the viciousness of his plan. He spoke of the company's past vulnerabilities and his vision for a more secure future, his words a carefully constructed lie. He then revealed the true insidious nature of his new software. It was not just a security measure, but a Trojan horse, a masterpiece of digital treachery. He explained to the bewildered engineers that it was designed to subtly and catastrophically corrupt the company's original, more ethical employee database, erasing all evidence of his discriminatory hiring practices, and most importantly, the whistleblower's identity. The destruction, he explained with a chilling smile, was a timed, insidious sabotage meticulously engineered to cause a complete system failure, not immediately, but at a specific crucial moment during the test, a point of no return. This elaborate act of malice was designed to achieve multiple diabolical objectives, to ensure his software would be seen as a heroic fix after the inevitable failure of the old system, to publicly discredit the company's previous security protocols, and to permanently silence the whistleblower and any lingering evidence of his treachery. The ticking clock of the software's countdown, a digital time bomb ticking down to zero, added a terrifying layer of suspense. A large screen behind Marcus displayed a countdown clock, the numbers ticking down with a relentless hypnotic rhythm. The air grew heavier, the silence more profound, as everyone in the room watched the numbers drop. Eleanor, watching from the observation area, her heart pounding in her chest, felt the pressure mount. Every second was a battle against Marcus's malice and the subtle treachery hidden within the sophisticated machinery. She knew with a horrifying certainty that settled deep in her bones that the company she so desperately wanted to save, the legacy she fought to protect, now hung by a single fraying thread, a silent countdown to either triumph or utter ruin. She sensed a growing instability in the system, a faint discordant hum that only her ears, her unique intuitive understanding of her own company's systems, could perceive. She knew that the system was not just failing, it was being systematically, maliciously dismantled from within. The server room was a pressure cooker of anticipation. The countdown clock on the main screen ticked down with a hypnotic, terrifying rhythm, its green numbers flashing with a quiet menace. Marcus Thorne, the architect of this digital treachery, stood at the center of the room, his face a mask of smug confidence. He was surrounded by his cronies, a gallery of sycophants and yes-men who watched him with a fawning, nauseating admiration. The engineers and senior managers, 100 pairs of eyes all focused on the countdown clock, were a silent, tense audience unaware of the insidious trap that was about to be sprung. The silence was thick, heavy, punctuated only by the low hum of the servers and the soft, excited whispers of the gathered executives. The air felt charged with an unspoken tension, a chilling anticipation of the catastrophic failure that Marcus had so meticulously engineered. Eleanor, still in her janitor's uniform, watched from her isolated corner, her heart pounding in her chest. She had a unique, almost supernatural understanding of her own company's systems, a deep intuitive knowledge that went far beyond mere code. She could feel the system's instability, a faint, discordant hum that was a testament to the digital treachery hidden within Marcus's software. She knew with a horrifying certainty that at the moment the clock hit zero, the company's employee database would not just fail, it would be systematically, maliciously dismantled from within, erasing all evidence of his discriminatory practices and exposing the whistleblower. She was a silent, helpless observer, a ghost in her own machine watching as her company. Her father's legacy was about to be brought to its knees. She had to act. She had to do something. But what? She was a janitor. She was invisible. She had no access, no authority, no voice. The clock ticked down to 10 seconds, 9-8. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Marcus's triumphant smile widened, a thin, cruel slash across his face. He gestured to his technical team, a silent command for them to prepare for the heroic fix they had rehearsed a dozen times. The engineers, still unaware of the true nature of the software, prepared to execute the planned reboot sequence. The air in the room was electric, the tension building to an almost unbearable crescendo. Everyone was focused on the screen, on the final terrifying moments of the countdown. No one noticed the quiet woman in the baggy polyester jumpsuit, her eyes a dark, intelligent fire watching their every move. No one saw her hands trembling slightly reach into her pocket and pull out her personal, unhackable CEO's phone. Suddenly, the bank's main door swung open with a forceful, decisive push. A figure entered, radiating an aura of undeniable power and command that instantly silenced the room. The clicking of her expensive heels against the polished marble floor was the only sound. It was Eleanor Vance, the CEO of Evergreen Financial. Her face, a study in steely, unreadable composure, was a mask of cold fury, but her eyes, sharp and intelligent, missed nothing. She surveyed the scene in a single sweeping glance, her manager Karen gloating with a false smile, Jamal, her son, standing with his hands up his face, pale with a mix of fear and dignity, the police about to make a wrongful arrest. The entire bank fell into a shocked, absolute silence. Karen, seeing the CEO, a woman she had only spoken to on the phone, felt her triumph turn to ice, her smile freezing on her lips. The police froze, their hands hovering, unsure how to proceed. It was the ultimate chaotic moment, a truly breathless moment where everything seemed irrevocably lost before the most powerful person in the room, the mother, arrived to reclaim her son and deliver a crushing, undeniable judgment. Eleanor Vance's gaze, cold and analytical, fell first on Karen, then on Jamal, and finally on the faces of the police. She didn't ask for an explanation. She walked past Karen without a word, her presence a silent, crushing judgment, and stood between the officers and her son. She turned to the police and, with a voice that was calm, but carried the weight of absolute unassailable authority, said, "Officers, there must be a mistake. This young man is my son, Jamal Vance, and this woman," she gestured to a now trembling Karen without looking at her, "is my manager. I believe there has been a profound miscommunication. Before you take any action, I want a full, unedited security review and a complete statement from everyone present." She then turned to Jamal, and her face, for the briefest of moments, softened into a look of profound, aching love, a silent apology for not being there sooner. The look was a quiet conversation, a promise that everything would be okay now. Then, in a single devastating move, she pulled up a private remote access panel on her phone connected to the bank's deep-level servers. She didn't need to ask for a review. She did it herself. With a few deft taps of her thumb, she projected the full, unedited security footage onto the bank's main teller screen for everyone to see. The footage showed Jamal's initial respectful arrival, Karen's quick, condescending dismissal, and his calm, brilliant return. It then showed his detailed, flawless presentation juxtaposed with Karen's frantic, enraged call to the police, her lies caught on camera for the entire world to witness. It revealed everything, a brutal, undeniable portrait of prejudice and malice. The server room, once a crucible of tension, was now a silent tableau of utter shock. The countdown clock on the main screen had just reached 0, but instead of the catastrophic failure Marcus had planned, a different kind of apocalypse was unfolding. As the clock hit 0, the entire bank's main server screen and all the monitors in the room didn't flash with red error codes, but with a series of full, unedited security footage clips played in rapid succession. The footage was a brutal, undeniable portrait of prejudice and malice. It showed Marcus, his face a mask of condescending professionalism, lying to the board, manipulating data, and subtly, insidiously dismantling the company's ethical foundations. It showed him coaching Richard on how to frame Eleanor, and it showed him laughing about it with his cronies in a private chat. It revealed everything, a brutal, undeniable portrait of prejudice and malice. The footage was projected for everyone to see, a silent, damning testament to Marcus's deceit. The engineers and managers, their faces a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror, watched as their professional hero, the man they had trusted and admired, was revealed to be a snake. The very system he had designed, the system he had presented to the board as a masterpiece of security, had been a Trojan horse, a weapon to destroy his own company and cover his tracks. The silence in the room was deafening, the air thick with a profound, palpable sense of betrayal. Marcus, his face a grotesque mask of shock, disbelief, and incandescent fury, attempted to flee the auditorium, stumbling past the awestruck crowd, his impeccably tailored suit now seeming ill-fitting and stained with the metaphorical grime of his exposed deceit. His earlier theatrical grandeur had evaporated, leaving behind only the pathetic image of a cornered man. But before he could reach the emergency exits, a pair of discreet, impeccably dressed security personnel, Eleanor Vance's personal guard, moved with fluid, practiced precision, intercepting him. His hands were bound behind his back, his desperate protests and incoherent denials silenced. His voice rose in a desperate, animalistic wail, but their grip was firm, unyielding, a silent, powerful reminder that his reign of terror was over. Eleanor, a woman who valued integrity and loyalty above all else, especially within the pioneering institute she had painstakingly built and funded, wasted no time. She stood at the center of the server room, no longer a janitor, but the CEO, her presence radiating a cold, surgical authority. Her eyes, sharp and intelligent, met the gaze of every person in the room, a silent, crushing judgment. She then, with a voice that was calm but carried the weight of absolute, unassailable authority, began to speak. "This man," she gestured to a now trembling Marcus, "has betrayed the trust of every single person in this room. He has not only sabotaged our systems, but he has poisoned our culture. He has lied to you, he has lied to me, and he has lied to himself." She then, in a single devastating move, pulled up a private remote access panel on her phone, connected to the company's deep-level servers. She didn't need to ask for a review. She did it herself. With a few deft taps of her thumb, she projected the full, unedited security footage onto the bank's main teller screen for everyone to see. The footage showed Jamal's initial respectful arrival, Karen's quick, condescending dismissal, and his calm, brilliant return. It then showed his detailed, flawless presentation juxtaposed with Karen's frantic, enraged call to the police, her lies caught on camera for the entire world to witness. It revealed everything, a brutal, undeniable portrait of prejudice and malice. The footage, a brutal, undeniable portrait of prejudice and malice, was irrefutable. It showed Marcus's long-standing treachery, his systematic embezzlement of research funds through inflated equipment orders, his secret dealings with a corrupt rival conglomerate, and his calculated scheme to sell the flawed neuro-interface technology to them under false pretenses. His motivation was not just petty envy. It was a calculated, insidious plot to leverage the Institute's prestige for personal gain, to bleed it dry for his own hostile takeover regardless of the patient outcomes. He was immediately publicly fired, his termination announced over the Institute's sprawling public address system, his name stripped from every directory, every scientific publication list. The police, alerted by Evelyn, swiftly moved to arrest him on criminal charges for fraud, sabotage, and corporate espionage. His carefully constructed life of deceit crumbled, leaving him financially ruined, professionally disgraced, and utterly alone. His vast network of shallow associates evaporated like mist, leaving him without a single ally. His fate was a just and comprehensive downfall, his insidious greed and envy finally costing him everything he had so desperately sought to maintain. The gleaming auditorium, once the stage for his arrogance, became the witness to his total ruin. Then a quiet, almost imperceptible shift occurred. Eleanor, no longer a janitor. Her eyes now, a brilliant, empathetic light, turned her gaze to Richard Sterling, antagonist type B. He stood there, his face a portrait of fear and shame, his earlier theatrical grandeur now replaced by a quiet, heartbreaking humility. He had been a bully, a man of petty cruelties, but not a true villain like Marcus. He had simply been a man who had lost his way. Eleanor, with a deep, intuitive understanding of people, saw through his bluster to the raw, terrified man beneath. She didn't scold him. She didn't fire him. She simply said, "Richard, your job is to lead with respect. I hope you've learned something tonight." She gave him a second chance he never would have given her a second chance. That was the true measure of her character. He nodded, his eyes welling up with tears of gratitude, a profound, life-altering sense of shame and gratitude washing over him. And finally, to the stunned engineers and managers, she made a promise. "I will not rest," she said, her voice filled with a quiet, fierce determination, "until every last person in this company, from the night shift janitor to the senior vice president, is treated with dignity, respect, and fairness. My father built this company on a foundation of integrity. I intend to rebuild that foundation brick by brick starting now." She then, with a single symbolic gesture, disabled Marcus's malicious software, a simple act that was a profound, powerful declaration of her intent. The server room, once a place of treachery and deceit, was now a place of hope, of new beginnings, of a promise that a new, more just world was possible. 7 years later. The faint scent of polished mahogany and expensive leather now mingled with a different, more powerful aroma, that of success forged from integrity. Eleanor Vance, once the isolated CEO haunted by her father's legacy, was now a titan not just of technology, but of ethical leadership. The company she had saved, Viridian Dynamics, had undergone a profound and remarkable transformation. It was now a global leader in AI-driven technologies, pioneering not just groundbreaking innovations, but also a new, more humane approach to corporate culture. The story of the janitor who was secretly the CEO, the woman who exposed her own management team's corruption and rebuilt her company on a foundation of integrity, had become a legend, a case study in every major business school, and a source of fierce pride for every Viridian employee. The quiet, determined woman who had once navigated the night shift as an invisible janitor now commanded boardrooms with a new, powerful grace. Her leadership was no longer defined by ruthless efficiency, but by profound empathy and a steadfast commitment to justice. She had learned from her time on the factory floor that true value lay not just in financial breakthroughs and market dominance, but in integrity and quiet talent, and in investing in people. Her bond with her employees, especially with her janitorial staff, was now a profound, genuine one. She had not only fully embraced her new vision, but had become its staunchest advocate, leveraging her vast influence to champion her company's new groundbreaking projects and defend her innovative, often unconventional approaches against any lingering resistance from the more traditional elements of the tech industry. She was no longer a CEO in a gilded cage. She was a leader among her people, walking among them, listening to them, and fighting for them. Richard Sterling, the man who had once been a bully, was now her loyal and trusted head of facilities. The second chance she had given him had been a crucible for his transformation. He had shed his arrogance and embraced a newfound humility, becoming a mentor and a fierce protector of the company's new ethical culture. He had not only learned from his mistakes, but had dedicated his life to ensuring they were never repeated. His face, once a mask of petty authority, was now a portrait of quiet dignity and deep gratitude. He often spoke of Eleanor with a reverence that bordered on awe, a living testament to the power of forgiveness and the profound impact of a second chance. The story of the whistleblower, the brilliant young black engineer who had left the company, had a joyful, redemptive conclusion. The moment Eleanor had fired Marcus, she had also initiated a frantic company-wide search for the young man. She had found him not in a rival company, but in a small non-profit organization where he was using his brilliance to build low-cost open-source technology for underprivileged communities. She had not only offered him his old job back, but had given him a leadership role in a new groundbreaking R&D division. She had given him the resources, the freedom, and the support to bring his visions to life. His division, now a cornerstone of Viridian Dynamics, was responsible for pioneering affordable, accessible technology for underserved communities around the world. He was not just an employee, he was a partner, a visionary, and a living, breathing testament to Viridian's new commitment to ethical innovation. Eleanor's legacy had transcended her personal success, blooming into a powerful force for social change. Never forgetting her own struggles, the quiet indignity of being dismissed, and the profound injustice that had once driven her to the brink of despair, she had poured her heart and a significant portion of her new resources into giving back. She established a thriving nonprofit foundation largely funded by Viridian Dynamics and bolstered by global donations from leading tech corporations, financial firms, and private individuals called the Phoenix Fund. Its mission was simple yet profound: to provide free or low-cost small business loans and financial literacy services for underprivileged entrepreneurs, and more importantly, to offer comprehensive hands-on vocational training and apprenticeship programs in software development, project management, and ethical AI for at-risk youth and individuals from marginalized communities. She personally oversaw the Phoenix Fund's programs, mentoring young apprentices, guiding them through their training journeys, and sharing not just practical scientific skills, but more importantly, imparting invaluable lessons in self-reliance, integrity, and the quiet, profound power of finding new purpose through honest, meaningful work. She helped them translate their innate talents into marketable skills, connecting them with jobs, providing mentorship, and building a community of support. The worn copy of the business plan she had presented to Karen Thorne, now lovingly rebound and inscribed with Eleanor's elegant handwriting, was proudly displayed in the entrance of the Phoenix Fund, a powerful symbol of resilience, second chances, and the beauty of human potential. It was a tangible reminder of where he had come from and how far he had come. He often spoke at vocational schools, community centers, and scientific conferences around the world, sharing his extraordinary story, emphasizing that true value lay not in outward appearances or material wealth, but in inherent skill and unwavering character, and in the transformative power of a second chance. His message resonated deeply, inspiring a new generation of architects, entrepreneurs, and social entrepreneurs to join his cause. The story culminates on a warm, late-afternoon sunlight streaming through the immense, soaring glass facade of the Viridian Dynamics Innovation Center. This state-of-the-art facility, sprawling and meticulously designed, was entirely funded by Eleanor and conceptualized by her new R&D team, embodying her vision of ethical technology and community-centered urban development. It was a cathedral of creativity, bristling with the latest in advanced prototyping technologies, virtual reality simulation suites, and a fully functional zero-emission cleanroom for assembling delicate biomedical devices, all designed to bring Viridian's revolutionary medical concepts to life, from concept to patient. Eleanor stood on a raised platform at the center of the showroom, now a woman in her prime, her face a portrait of quiet joy and profound fulfillment. She was surrounded by her new R&D team, a diverse, brilliant group of individuals led by the young engineer she had fought so hard to reclaim. They were showcasing Viridian's latest creation, the Resilience microloan system, a sleek, powerful, and remarkably affordable AI-driven system designed for at-home neurological recovery and cognitive enhancement, a direct spiritual successor to the bespoke therapy the young engineer had designed for his own project. She highlighted its innovative modular AI architecture, its user-friendly interface, and its personalized feedback systems, all hallmarks of the new R&D division's design philosophy and their unwavering commitment to accessible ethical healthcare. As she spoke, the entire room, a mix of industry leaders, medical professionals, and prospective patients, listened with a hushed, reverential awe. Her message was clear. Viridian was no longer just a company. It was a force for good. The quiet woman who had once guarded an empty complex, once broken and invisible, had become the master of innovation, building a legacy not just of unparalleled neurorobotics excellence and ethical AI development, but of boundless hope, compassion, and restored dignity for countless others. She had left an indelible mark on the world, one perfectly tuned neural interface, one rehabilitated life, one ethical AI solution at a time. The world was still full of challenges, full of medical and human flaws. But for Eleanor and her Viridian family, the family she chose, the family she built through courage and compassion, and the countless lives she touched through the Phoenix Fund, the future was an open horizon, full of infinite promise, built on unshakable foundations of resilience, integrity, and boundless transformative purpose. The old bookstore, once a symbol of his struggles, now stood as a testament to the enduring power of a single honest man and the woman who saw beyond the quiet facade to the pure genius within. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path, even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming narratives that delve into the profound human spirit and the power of unseen heroes. Thank you for joining our journey.